What's up, everyone? It's Nick, back with another basketball video, and my Lakers are going to the conference finals for the first time in 10 years. That's why I had to rep them for this. I'm very excited for that, and I'd also talk about the rest of the playoffs. Before we begin, please make sure to like and subscribe because it really helps out and doesn't take much time at all. Now let's cue the intro. So I gotta say about the Lakers-Rockets series that Frank Vogel was really on top of his game with his adjustments. So after game 1, Frank Vogel decided to play Markieff Morris more, playing him at least 22 minutes, and not play JaVale McGee or Dwight Howard so much. In fact, not even at all later on in the series. JaVale did start the next 2 games after game 1, however, he only played 8 and 6 minutes respectively, and while Dwight Howard played 9 minutes in game 1, he didn't play again until garbage time of Game 5. And it worked out really well because Markieff Morris was playing very well. Scored 16 points in Game 2. Game 3, he was quiet, only 2 points, but that didn't matter because LeBron and AD scored 36 and 26 respectively, and playoff Rondo arrived. Game 4, Markieff Morris scored 9 points. Alright, I'll take it. It's not like he's supposed to be a go-to guy or anything. Game 5, though, he scored 16 points. And now the question is, do the Lakers continue this strategy or do they go back to what they do traditionally? Because they knew against the Rockets' small ball lineup that they can't play traditional ball anymore like they have all season because JaVale and Dwight Howard, they just can't run with those guys. And I did say before that Marcus Morris is the Morris brother I'd rather have, but right now, I'm starting to refrain from that. And another thing the Lakers did was, this was a pretty obvious strategy, and this is what you should do, is dare Russell Westbrook to shoot because you know that he's not a good shooter, particularly from 3. I mean, yeah, he has that mid-range shot, but you know he's not a good 3-point shooter. And you know the Rockets hate mid-range shots, which kind of makes the Chris Paul-Russell Westbrook trade not really make sense, but we'll talk about that later. And in games 2 and 5, Russell Westbrook did terrible. The other games where he did actually play well, he was doing exactly what the Lakers wanted him to do. And you'd rather Russell Westbrook beat you by shooting the ball than getting to the rim, right? I certainly would. As for James Harden, after game 1, they decided to double him from way up top. That was one of the key adjustments made. And yes, Harden was still putting up numbers because he's James Harden. You're not going to stop him. Hard to even slow him down. And no, he's not as bad as some people make him out to be in the playoffs. I mean, yes, he has a reputation for falling short in big moments. And he kind of did here, but it's not like he didn't put up his numbers. He did still score 29 points on 50% from the field and a 62% true shooting percentage. However, if you ever played basketball in your life before or watched it, you know stats don't tell the whole story, and you know that he has that lethal step back 3, so when you double him up top, you're both making it harder for him to shoot the 3 and harder for him to attack the basket. If you're guarding him one-on-one up top, he'll easily blow by you, but against 2 guys, yeah, it's a lot tougher. And as for the 3 ball, he shot 5 less 3s per game during the series against the Lakers. In fact, the Rockets as a whole team, they shot a lot less 3s than they normally would because of Frank Vogel's defensive schemes. And another thing about when the Lakers would bring the double from way up top on Harden. While the help responsibilities are still the same, it's just where it comes from, like where the guys are, that's what makes a difference when you double him from way up top. Because you're not going to guard James Harden one-on-one. Like, there's no one in the league that can actually do that. Not even the best defenders can guard James Harden one-on-one and actually expect him to not get buckets. And game 4, even though Harden overall had a very good series from the statistical standpoint, he did have a really bad game 4 going just 2 for 11. And he still managed to score 21 points just from taking 20 free throws alone, making 16 of them. But he still scored 29 points per game on really high efficiency. But hey, he's James Harden. It's not like you should really expect him to not get his buckets. And yeah, there were some times when James Harden was able to find his way around the double team, but he's James Harden. Of course that's going to happen. And you could tell from the numbers that it's not like that completely stopped him. But Frank Vogel adjusted. He decided to adjust with when and how. They double him. And one thing that was particularly working was doubling him late into the shot clock. So that way he has to make decisions a lot faster, because you know his tendency to dribble the ball several times before he makes his move, right? So doubling him late into the shot clock was a big adjustment. So I gotta say, Frank Vogel, great job with the adjustments, and he definitely severely outcoached Mike D'Antoni. Now I will say though that I think that the fact that PJ Tucker, like I said before, isn't letting Anthony Davis look like prime Shaq, despite being at a huge size disadvantage, is very impressive. But still, at the end of the day, small ball only works to a certain extent, and where the Rockets go from here, we already know Mike D'Antoni's not coming back. It's a big question mark. And while yes, Clint Capella was a minus for them because he stood near the rim to get rebounds a lot and he just clogged up the lane, at the same time though, when really thinking about it now, despite Chris Paul and James Harden not getting along, the Rockets really should have tried to figure out a way to make it work. Because, let's be real, Chris Paul is a much better fit to play in the Rockets system than Russell Westbrook, considering that Chris Paul is a much better shot creator. And early on, when the trade was first made, I thought, well, hey, Westbrook gets to the line a lot too, and the drive and kick game might be more effective in Houston. However, with two ball-dominant guards playing on the same team, even though they may be friends from a long time ago, like they actually knew each other growing up. They weren't just teammates in OKC, they actually also knew each other growing up. In reality though, two ball-dominant guards on the same team, yeah, that was a question mark from day one. And not only that, they owe both those guys over $40 million next year, and I believe the year after as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. So right now the Rockets are kind of stuck in no man's land. As for the Lakers though, I'm excited. First time in 10 years onto the conference finals, just awaiting the winner of the Clippers-Nuggets series. And in my earlier video I said I think the Clippers got this in 7 games, and looks like I was right about 7 games. Now we'll just have to see about the winner. After the Clippers went up 3-1 though, I thought, I don't know if this is going to age too well. But actually, it might. The only way it really will age perfectly is if the Clippers actually win Game 7. However, I'll admit though, I made that video when the Clippers were up 2-1, and I didn't actually think that it'd go to Game 7 in this fashion, where the Clippers blow a 3-1 lead and blow back-to-back 16-point leads late in the game. And during the Lob City era, I started thinking that Doc Rivers is overrated, and Swish Out also made a video on this. You can check that out if you want, and I'll leave a link in the description. And yes, it's become a trend for Doc Rivers to blow leads in the playoffs. Now this time around, I still think the Clippers are going to win the series, but I don't think I'd want to bet on it now at this point. I mean, I'm not a gambling man myself, but if I was, I think I would have bet on the Clippers anyway. So yeah, I think I'd be on pins and needles right now if I was a betting man, because I definitely would have put my money on the Clippers for this series. And one really big blunder that B-Ball Breakdown pointed out in Game 6 is to put in Patrick Beverley with 5 fouls early in the fourth quarter, and you know he can't play that tenacious defense he usually plays because he's 1 foul away from fouling out. And he tried to take a charge, he didn't quite get there in time, and yep, he fouled out. It didn't take very long either. Also, for the Clippers, early on, I was giving Montrezl Harrell the benefit of the doubt, knowing that he had some personal problems that he had to take care of and didn't enter the bubble until Game 1 of the Mavericks-Clippers series. Now though, he's got to step it up now. He's got to show why he won 6th Man of the Year. And Marcus Morris, I remember not that long ago I said that he's the Morris brother I would have rather had, but I think I'm starting to eat my words there. I might, maybe not. Marcus Morris, for the most part, yeah, he has been good enough. Game 6, he did terrible. And Paul George and Kawhi Leonard were there for the Clippers, except late in the game, Paul George was just 1 for 5 in the fourth quarter. Kawhi, he had a pretty good fourth quarter, just not a very good third quarter. Overall though, Kawhi and PG were the only guys that really did show up on offense for the Clippers. And Lou Williams, like, he's scoring 14 points per game, but extremely inefficiently for the Clippers. Now, yes, the Clippers are the better team than the Nuggets on paper. However, the Nuggets right now, they're just outplaying the Clippers. And back to Montrezl Harrell, even though he may be a better athlete than Jokic, Jokic's size advantage has just been detrimental to Montrezl Harrell. And it's not like Zubats is playing out of his mind either. So we'll have to see what happens with the Clippers-Nuggets game. I still think the Clippers are going to win, but I'm not like absolutely sure of it. I think that it could go either way. For the Eastern Conference Finals though, I think that the Celtics are going to win, but I think that he could match up with them pretty well. And I think that we all owe Jimmy Butler an apology. We already know that for sure. For the Celtics-Raptors series, okay, I guess I should have stuck with my original prediction that the Celtics would win in 7. Let's be real though. If Pascal Siakam was as advertised, the Raptors would have won that series. Really, the Raptors are just a superstar away from really being a championship team. It makes us wonder, should Kawhi have stayed in Toronto? Because, yeah, he may have wanted to build his brand in LA. However, the Raptors have a better coach in Nick Nurse. I mean, yeah, I started to praise Doc a little more in more recent years for overachieving after the Lob City era before Kawhi and PG, but now I'm not so sure. In fact, Glenn Davis even said it himself that Doc Rivers is overrated. If you want to check that interview out, see it for yourself. And Glenn Davis, big baby, he played for Doc Rivers in both Boston and LA. And I said it before, I'll definitely say it again. Pascal Siakam is overrated. He got exposed in the playoffs, and the Raptors went to 7 games in spite of him. Do I still think he'll make some All-Star games in the future though? Yes. However, he's not a number 1 on a championship team. I think that's become as clear as day at this point. Now, if the Lakers do move on to the finals, hopefully they do. We want this championship in the memory of the late great Kobe Bryant. I think it'd be really exciting to see Lakers Celtics in the finals. But I think in terms of who I'm less scared of, I'd say the Heat. And I'm not going to discredit the Heat, like how could we at this point, but still. I do still think that the Celtics are a better team now. While Eric Spoelstra severely outcoached Mike Budenholzer, I don't think that's going to happen against Brad Stevens. I think that it's going to actually be a legit battle between the two coaches because, as we all know, both of them are 2 of the best coaches in the NBA right now, and I think that Eric Spoelstra has become more noticed as one of the great coaches. In the Big 3 Heat era, I think just how good he was tended to be overshadowed by the star power that he had. At the end of the day though, I think that the Celtics are going to win this series in 6. I just think that they have a better constructed team. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Heat actually ended up in the finals. Although if it's Lakers Heat in the finals, that'd be interesting too. Because we know LeBron won 2 championships with the Miami Heat back in the day. And Lakers Nuggets in the conference finals, I mean, okay, I think I'd feel better about that in terms of the Lakers' chances of winning, but I'm actually not as pessimistic about beating the Clippers right now as I was before. Even though the Clippers have a deeper roster, they're not really playing like it in the playoffs. And I did say in my last video, Jamal Murray looks like he's starting to come back down to earth now, but he stepped it up once again, and he's played really well in the last couple games. Scored 26 in Game 5 and 21 in Game 6. We'll see how he does in Game 7. And, oh yeah, Michael Porter Jr., not too bad off the bench himself. That's the end of this video. If you made it to the end, I really appreciate that. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.